Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki, and welcome to the 574th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 195th YouTube production hosted by our wonderful downtown Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thanks for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or C-SAAHN, as I like to pronounce the acronym, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Every fifth Tuesday at Imagine, the theme is the art of investing. And we co-host this program with my good friend and member of the Western New York Sustainable Business Roundtable, J.D. Hartman. J.D. represents them in this program as we find people and businesses and people that are investing in our community in a very responsible and sustainable way. Now, before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and your video turned off. If you have a question or comment, please type it into the chat box and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation as time allows. We are recording this program, so you can watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And please, we hope you share the link with others. Now, on to our featured speaker. Joining us today to present Equity, Opportunity, and Resilience, Buffalo's Cooperative Economy, is the Executive Director of Cooperation Buffalo, Andrew Delmonte. Andrew is an organizer, facilitator, and business developer who believes in the power of communities and workplaces to govern themselves. Andrew serves as executive director of Cooperation Buffalo, which they also co-founded. Cooperation Buffalo is a nonprofit that mobilizes workers to achieve economic security through cooperative business ownership in Buffalo's marginalized communities. Andrew has previously served as Director of Cooperative Development at Push Buffalo, a certified business advisor for SUNY Buffalo State's Small Business Development Center, as well as coordinator of the Social Enterprise Center at the Small Business Development Center. Nationally, Andrew serves on the board of Seed Commons, a cooperatively governed investment fund that brings together cooperatively owned and democratically controlled organizations around the United States and issues non-extractive loans where they're needed most. Well, to continue that introduction will be J.D. Hartman. And J.D., why don't you introduce Andrew as you know him and have come to work with him? Take it away, J.D.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks to the Public Library. Great to be here. And yes, I have been crossing paths with Andrew for well over a decade or two now. And I think one thing that how I would describe Andrew is he's a business person. These are cooperative, his clients, his anyway, the result of his hard work results in successful for-profit businesses that sell goods and services and also employ people and so on and so forth. So I think when people see that Andrew's the executive director of, let's say, a nonprofit, or they hear a cooperatively owned business like the Lexington Food Co-op or let's say Bread Hive down on Connecticut Street in Buffalo, they think nonprofit, and couldn't be further from the truth. I remember it may have been Andrew as a consultant who was helping the Lexington Food Co-op said, no profit, no mission. No profit, no employees. So that, I'm going to let Andrew walk us through, some of the nitty gritty of his work. But I just wanted to set the table that cooperatively owned business, cooperatively owned businesses are a very viable form of ownership of for-profit businesses. And Andrew is probably one of the leading experts on it in Western New York. So I'm honored to have him. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much for the intro, JD. Thank you to Dennis. Thank you to the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. I am going to share my screen and walk you through a little bit of the story of Cooperation Buffalo, our organization, and then really importantly, some of the stories of Buffalo's cooperative business economy. All right. Can we see my screen okay, JD?
Absolutely.
Great.
Looks great.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as Dennis said, I'm the executive director of Cooperation Buffalo, and our mission statement is to mobilize workers to achieve economic security through cooperative business ownership. Our goal there is to generate wealth and power in communities that are often most affected by inequality. Cooperation Buffalo is a nonprofit organization based here in Western New York. We are a mighty team of 4 that provide training, business development and technical assistance support and loan capital to folks that are starting or in existing cooperatively owned businesses and other employee-owned businesses. And we'll break down what some of those words mean in just a minute. Some of what we do, as I mentioned, we do a lot of workshops, trainings, webinars, got a strong education arm, just talking about what the cooperative economy is and how folks can operate these businesses in a way that's going to have great outcomes for the workers and for the community. We also house a physical and digital resource library with all sorts of resources about cooperatives, about the solidarity economy, about ways to envision an economy that works for us. We also every year do a multi-week fellowship program for co-op entrepreneurs that I'll mention again in a few minutes. Big bulk of our work is incubation and technical assistance for the co-ops that we work with. And then as an augment to that, through the National Seed Commons CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, we're able to provide what we call non-extractive loans, so loans that work for the business, that don't extract wealth from the community. To some of these cooperative businesses that are getting started in our region. And here's just a little snapshot of what we've done. As I mentioned, Cooperation Buffalo has been around for almost 9 years now. In that time, since 2016, we've provided 23 new co-op entrepreneurs and teams with direct technical assistance to support various projects, many of which have gone on to form businesses, some of which have not gone on to take other forms of providing community support. The co-ops that we work with employ an estimated 51 people currently here in Buffalo and Western New York. And last year alone, we provided over 400 hours of technical assistance to those co-op businesses. Total, all time, we've supported 150 different individual entrepreneurs and teams of co-op entrepreneurs to explore their ideas. And we've helped 11 new businesses that are cooperatively owned to launch in our region, which is really exciting. A little bit about our lending to date. I think these figures are as of the end of last year. We provided $100,000 of new lending in 2024. We've lent a total of $1 million of this non-extractive capital to Western New York cooperative businesses, and we've helped co-ops secure, I think the number is closer to 1.6 million in capital from all sources, whether that's investors or loans or money that we've helped folks to secure so that they can launch their businesses. And then just zooming out a little bit, I mentioned that we're a part of this national cooperative loan or lending organization called Seed Commons. Seed Commons was started in 2011. There's 39 member organizations. Cooperation Buffalo is just one of those organizations that makes up the Seed Commons network. And we've done a total of, at this point, over 434 of these non-extractive investments, and that's over $100 million in lending going to these businesses that are owned by the community, owned by the workers that work in them, owned by the people that are most affected by what the business produces. And then a little bit about our training. I mentioned we do this annual training called the Cooperative Changemakers Fellowship in the fall. We have trained 190 co-op entrepreneurs and advocates over the past 6 years in this program. It's a really wonderful, in-depth, multi-week course. It's at least 10 weeks of classroom training where we dig into business basics, co-op basics, how to work and make decisions effectively together with peers. And then just some statistics. We're really proud of the fact that over half of the folks in this class are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, and over 2/3 are women and trans and other gender diverse folks in the room. So this co-op economy is led by the people who are often excluded from the mainstream economy, and that's a really important message I'll be touching on again in a few minutes. So enough about us, about our organization. Now I get to spend a few minutes, we'll have to keep me to a few minutes, talking about something I love talking about, which is what the heck is a cooperative and why is the cooperative economy important? And you know, building off of what JD was saying, these are for-profit businesses. It's really important to note that cooperatives are all around us, right? So you'll see this statistic highlighted in green. An estimated 12% of humanity are members in cooperatives across the entire world, right? That's a lot of human beings. Cooperatives are not a fringe thing, not an unusual thing. This is actually a really tested and proven way to do business. And we believe a really resilient way to do business, especially for folks who are often seeing money leave their local economy instead of staying rooted here. So a cooperative at its most basic is some kind of business entity that's designed to meet the common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations of its members. And there's three important pieces to this. Co-ops are member-owned, member-controlled, and member-benefiting. What do we mean by member-owned? The co-op is jointly owned and governed by the members of the business, right? So in a traditional for-profit business, you might have like one, maybe two people that own the company and everybody else is a worker or a customer or serves some other function. In a cooperative, the membership are going to be a group of people who are impacted by the business, many people. The members also control that co-op. So they don't just own it, they don't just own the shares, they also democratically operate the business on the basis of one member, one vote. It's one human being, one vote, right? It doesn't matter how much money you've contributed to the business. It doesn't matter if you were individually wealthier than your peers, and you have the same vote as the other human beings that make up this cooperative with you. And then lastly, member benefiting. Importantly, cooperatives are operated for the benefit of these members. These members, these owners, these investors are the folks who have created this business, probably most of the time because they're trying to meet a community need that this membership shares, right, or has identified as a group. And so these members will sometimes benefit when there's profit at the end of the year. There might be a profit share between all the members. Sometimes the members just forming this business together are providing a needed benefit, like we need a banking institution in our community, so we started this cooperative credit union together, or we need a grocery store in this community, so we started a customer-owned grocery store for ourselves. Cooperatives all over the globe generally follow these 7 cooperative principles, some of which I just touched on in those important points, right? So open membership, open to all who meet the criteria. Those members democratically control the enterprise. Those members participate economically in the business. Co-ops have autonomy in the economic landscape that they're in. There's an emphasis on education, an emphasis on being cooperative with other cooperative businesses, and an emphasis on concern for the community, which is sometimes a little bit different than the sort of profit-driven motive we see at a lot of large corporations, right? Where the most important thing is making money. Here, the most important thing is providing for those of us in the community that need a product or service. There's many different types of cooperatives. I'm not going to spend too long on this slide because I could spend lots of time on it, but I want to highlight some of the more common types of cooperatives in that column on the left-hand side. So we have worker cooperatives. These are businesses where the members are the workers. They're the employees of the company. These are workers that own their workplace together. There's also consumer cooperatives, which are pretty popular here in the US. Most common way you'll see this show up is a grocery store that is owned by the community, right? JD mentioned the Lexington co-op markets in Buffalo on the north and west sides. We also have a startup called the African Heritage Food Co-op that is forming on Buffalo's east side. These are businesses that are owned by the people who do business with the co-op, right? The customers. There's also producer co-ops. This is probably the most common type in the US economic landscape. Very often producer co-ops are agricultural businesses, businesses where a bunch of small farmers co-own an enterprise together. And they might do that to share equipment. to share back office sort of administrative functions or to go to market together. And I'll share some examples of this in a minute, but locally we have Upstate Farms, a milk product that many of us buy at our grocery stores, right? That is a cooperative of local dairy farmers. Also in the housing and real estate spaces, we will have resident-owned buildings, right? Where residents own a house or own an apartment building together. We'll also have community investors who each own shares in maintaining a piece of real estate for the benefit of their neighborhood. And then we also have community land trusts, which are really more of a nonprofit model, but they serve a similar function. There's a group of members that democratically elect a board, usually to protect land from being gentrified or sold out from under the neighbors who have lived there for many decades. And then sometimes there's multi-stakeholder co-ops, which are kind of a weird amalgamation of some of the types of co-ops I described above, where you might have a consumer-owned grocery store whose workers also own the store alongside. So you've got different classes of members that both participate in governance, both benefit from the co-op, both maybe receive profit share at the end of a year when the business is profitable and has a surplus. So that's just a little intro into all the different types of cooperatives that make up the cooperative economy, both here and across the globe. At Cooperation Buffalo, we focus in on worker co-ops, but we do provide support to all of those types of cooperatives in our local network. So worker cooperatives, as I mentioned before, are businesses that are owned and controlled by their workers on the basis of one worker, one vote. Some of the reasons why we focus in on worker co-ops is we think it's a real powerful way to provide stability and an opportunity to build wealth. For folks who traditionally are in low-wage work or in marginalized communities, that's why you'll see many worker co-ops in industries where the wages are often really low, like childcare, home care, food service, restaurants and cafes and things like that. These workers kind of have a bad shake in the mainstream economy. And one way out of that is some control over their workplace, right? One worker, one vote. They decide how things are done. And they can also return more of the profits of that business back to themselves as the workers when they're the ones running the show. And worker co-ops can start as startup businesses, so brand new businesses that start up just like any other small business, or as conversions of existing businesses. This is something we're seeing more and more as there's a growing number of small businesses, especially in our local and national economy, that are owned by baby boomers who are thinking about retiring and are not sure if their son or daughter or sibling is going to take the business from them and keep it in the family. They're not sure if they want to sell to a competitor or a private equity firm that is probably just going to gut the company and sell it for parts. One really great succession plan option for business owners is to sell the business to the people that have been part of the reason that business has been successful for many decades, the workers that are there and really want to keep those jobs in the local economy. And so we have a special program at Cooperation Buffalo where we're focusing in on trying to reach those selling business owners to talk to them about selling their companies to their employees. I won't spend too much time here, but just flagging that this worker co-op, as I mentioned, is one type of all those different types of co-ops that you'll see on the right-hand side of this Venn diagram. And it also is one of several different types of employee ownership at companies, right? So you might have heard of an employee stock ownership plan or an ESOP or an employee ownership trust. These are other vehicles that allow a company to sell shares to the workers who are going to directly own those shares and have an ownership stake in the company. Some of these are more appropriate, like the ESOP in particular. For much larger businesses, it's pretty costly to maintain an ESOP, but for the smallest or micro businesses, the worker co-op model, which also provides this guarantee of democratic control for the workers, is often the most appropriate way for small businesses to engage in employee ownership. But we can certainly talk to folks who are interested in this area and find what's best for you, along with all the wonderful professionals that we're able to call on for support for our co-ops. That's a little bit about worker co-ops, a little bit about employee ownership. I want to spend just a few more minutes, and then I'll stop talking, talking about a little bit of the really rich history that Buffalo has in terms of cooperatives. You know, these days you look around, people might be most familiar with cooperatives like the Lexington Co-op grocery store, the African Heritage food co-op that's on the east side. But there is a real rich history here, and I'm going to give you some great historical examples, and then I'll just tell you some about the co-ops that are in our ecosystem today. One of the earliest recorded cooperative endeavors in Buffalo is something called the Citizens Cooperative Society that was founded in 1928 on the East Side by a physician, Dr. Ezekiel Nelson. This cooperative project existed for over 30 years. Through the early 60s, they launched a cooperatively owned grocery store, a credit union, and an educational campaign to teach people about economics. And the full archive of this organization is available in the Monroe Fordham collection at the Buffalo State College Special Collections. It's a really great documentation of what was an early foray into cooperative economics in the African American community in Buffalo, who needed to build an economy for themselves because they were being actively excluded from the mainstream economy. Fast forward to the 60s and 70s, another Black-owned cooperative grocery store was something called the Echo Cooperative, or the East Side Community Co-op. It started as a buying club of friends and neighbors that wanted to source produce and healthy food together. They expanded into a full-on grocery store that was on Genesee at one point, also on William Street. This co-op existed for a number of years. It eventually phased out because members were not shopping there enough. They were shopping more at larger grocery stores, which is an ongoing struggle for these small community-owned grocers. One other little example I want to highlight, a feminist bookstore collective called Emma, which existed in the 70s and 80s. It was at one point on the corner of Greenfield and Main Streets in Buffalo. Emma was a safe space for lesbians and queers, a hub of leftist culture, and a place to find feminist literature that was often not offered at mainstream bookshops. And I love this quote from one of the members that the collective believed that how they ran the store was just as important as whether they ran it, and also a real emphasis on making sure that they had practices that were positive for the workers at the store. And then one other cooperative story that unfortunately has become more in our narrative these past few years. There was a campaign in the mid-90s to open a cooperative grocery store on the East Side that was going to be called Our Market. This was an attempt to deal with the food desert, or the food apartheid, on the East Side. And this was happening alongside other government efforts to try to lure a big box grocery store to the East Side, and to Jefferson in particular. City Hall promised some money to this project that they later took back. But a successful planning committee recruited several hundred members that were going to become the first members of this co-op. They commissioned a market study that proved that there was an economic need for a grocery store in this neighborhood. And those efforts and the attention that they continued to bring to this issue were in large part what eventually led to Tops Markets opening on Jefferson Avenue in 2003. And that Tops Markets, I always love to point out, received a couple $1 million in state funding in order to get started. Can you imagine if that couple $1 million successfully made its way to a community-owned grocery store instead of a large chain? So while Our Market never officially opened, it's an example of the community organizing effort that these co-ops can have meeting community needs. And then just to highlight some of the local co-ops that are in our ecosystem. So I mentioned Upstate Niagara, Upstate Farms. It's also some producer co-ops like the Eden Valley Growers, consumer-owned businesses, the Lexington Co-op, African Heritage Food Co-op, Urban Roots Cooperative Garden Market, which when it opened was the first garden center operated as a co-op, I think, in the country. Also the East Aurora Co-op Market. And then I include Good Neighbors Credit Union here, but really there's an asterisk. All credit unions are also cooperatives, right? This is an example of all of us pooling our money together in a project that doesn't give money to outside shareholders or CEOs. Instead, that money just gets borrowed by those of us who are members of the credit union. And we have dozens of credit unions in the Western New York economy. In the housing and real estate space, some examples are the Nickel City Housing Cooperative, Mondragon Village Association, and the Fruit Belt Community Land Trust, which is the first land trust started in our area. And then the worker cooperatives. Many of these are co-ops that are near and dear to my heart because Cooperation Buffalo has had the privilege to work with these really daring co-op entrepreneurs over the past number of years. But we have Bread Hive Bakery and Cafe, Extra Extra Pizza, which is a pizzeria and wine bar owned by the workers. The Healing Grounds Cafe, another food service establishment right here next to me, actually on the corner of Grant and Lafayette on Buffalo's west side. The Farmer Pirates Compost, they're a worker-owned composting company. Rose Jade Consulting, they're a nonprofit consulting firm. And also the Arts Cafe down in Springville, New York is structured as a worker-owned business. And then lastly, just because co-ops are all about the people that make them up. These are just some of the people in our cooperative ecosystems. These are some shots of our past years of our fellowship training program. These are three of the four worker owners of the Extra Extra Pizza and Wine Bar. These are some of the owners of the Mondragon Village Association Real Estate Cooperative. And these are some of the happy worker owners at Farmer Pirates Compost who pick up food scraps from residents and from commercial businesses and make those food scraps into really rich soil that is healing our climate and our communities.
All right.
Thank you so much, JD.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you. I didn't know there are over, 900 million people on the planet involved in co-ops, but when you started putting the list up of local ones, I thought further, Welch's grape juice is a co-op and so on and so forth. So this is an integral part of our economy, and Cooperation Buffalo, it helps make it run. I want to just dig slightly deeper on one issue. You mentioned maybe there's a privately held, company whereby the owner is near, is at end of life as running the business. And you said, hey, this could help in succession. Do you have any examples of that happening in Western New York?
We do. There's a few that have changed hands. Not always when the owner is thinking of retirement. So actually the Farmer Pirates Compost business that I mentioned earlier is an example of a conversion of what was a privately held LLC at first. Those owners were not of retirement age, but they just knew they wanted to share the responsibility of ownership. So a couple of years ago, they reached out to us and said, hey, we would like some support converting our business entity to be a worker cooperative. We want to welcome in other employees at the business, both some employees that they already had and employees they knew they were looking to hire over the next few years into the ownership group, right? And so we help them change up their LLC operating agreement, create an onboarding process so that folks can become trained up as employees to feel comfortable and ready to take on the mantle of ownership. And now they were a co-op of 3. They're now a co-op of 7 employee owners at that company. We also did have a childcare business that unfortunately closed a few years after the pandemic, the Rose Garden Early Childhood Center, which was a great case study in exactly what you're talking about, where there's an owner of retirement age, knew that she had trusted and very capable teachers running the business day to day, and we helped that selling owner sell to the teachers in the classrooms so that childcare could become worker owned.
Right. Yeah. So Dennis, first of all, are there any questions from the audience? Or Dennis, do you have a question of Andrew at all?
Well, let's start with the audience and see if they have any. Hazen, do we have any questions coming in? I've got some, but we'll see what we got.
I have just one, and it is Andrew, not to choose a favorite child or anything, but are there any cooperatives you've been involved with whose paths you've just really enjoyed seeing? How has that gone?
Oh, so hard to pick favorites. I hate doing that, but oh goodness. I mean, I'll talked about Farmer Pirates already. They are very near and dear to my heart. They're a really exciting example of tying in both the sort of environmental climate justice aspect of what really makes business tick these days as we sort of shift focus to meet the needs of an ever-changing climate and planet, right? Also with this strong emphasis on being a good workplace and encouraging workers to step up into ownership, have an opportunity to build wealth and have more say over their business. So I really love their story just because it is this combo between climate justice and environmental justice and the sort of social justice aspect of worker ownership. One other example that I can't name yet, but we are working with a really outstanding group of mental health counselors and therapists who are in the process of forming a worker-owned management services organization that's going to be able to provide back office support to a number of therapists and folks in the mental health field, which is another one of those workforces that they struggle through tough jobs at a lot of the larger agencies here locally, and they really know what they need as workers, and this is going to be able to build a practice for them that is much more aligned with the needs of those workers, and allowing the therapists to take care of themselves too while they take care of other people.
Good.
Thank you
I
so
have
much.
an
I
answer
have,
to- I'm
I'm
sorry, I have a
sorry.
quick answer to that question. Being a co-op guy, I'm currently on the board of Urban Roots, and that's the garden center that Andrew mentioned earlier down at 5 Points. And one thing about consumer co-ops is that they make an effort and are successful at keeping money locally. I think for example, the food co-op, I'm a past president of the Lexington Food Co-op. I think they have over 50% of their dollars stay local. So if you
That's right.
believe in climate justice, buying local and whatnot, co-ops is a great avenue to look to spend your money on goods and services.
Good.
Sorry to interrupt, as a
Oh, fine.
Oh,
Andrew,
sorry.
tell me, there's such a need for housing. Every city seems to have that need. A lot of dollars go towards housing. How do you connect with that? Because I've heard the notion of co-ops, often with New York City or other cities, but not so much here in Buffalo. I think there's some examples, but what does a person really own, and how is it marketable? Do they own something that goes up if housing values go up, or how does that work? As simply as you can state it.
It's a great question. And yes, there are complicated answers. I'll try to keep it brief. Yeah, the proliferation of housing co-ops, particularly in the New York City area, was a confluence of right place, right time, good policy initiatives, those sorts of things, which has allowed a lot of people to stay in neighborhoods that really, outpriced the working class folks over the past several decades. When an individual is a member of a housing cooperative and they own a membership stake, they do own part of the equity in that property. So as the property value increases, there is the potential for that individual or that family to build equity for themselves over time. Co-ops will do a variety of ways to occasionally cap that equity, because if you think about it, the housing market goes really well. The price of that share for that individual or that family might become too pricey for other working class folks in the neighborhood. So there are what we call limited equity cooperatives that cap the amount of equity you can cash out to ensure that the building stays affordable for people in the future. But it's, you're owning an asset, and you're owning an asset together, and you're helping to preserve it for future generations. And that's really compelling, especially when we think about housing as a human right, not an economic project.
So what I would follow up with that is, has the national idea connected with Habitat for Humanity, for instance, where you have something similar, where you have work equity as part of the equity of doing it, but at least are attracting a lot of dollars? Has there been that type of mutual discussions?
Absolutely. Have been and are ongoing. I think there's always work to be done to kind of bridge the sort of hyper-capitalist housing market that we have at this point in our nation's history with the growing need for housing. And one really great local example I'll plug is Dr. Henry Taylor at the University of Buffalo is actively working on a pilot project to meet the needs of really micro neighborhood level communities on the east side, and the housing platform for that is co-ops. So we're envisioning how that can come together as that project moves forward as well.
Well, good. And finally, as people that hear this presentation, they may know examples of people who would be thinking, hey, that might be something so-and-so would be interested in, but they're not in Buffalo, they're in Phoenix, they're in Atlanta, wherever. And how do they work through you to connect at a national level, or do they have to search people out at a national level? How does that work?
We are so happy to connect folks to others, any others in the cooperative ecosystem, whether it's local or national. That principle 6 of the cooperative principles, cooperative supporting other co-ops, that's a fundamental value of ours. So we're always going to help, even if it's not a project that we can spend a lot of time on here in Buffalo. So please reach out to Cooperation Buffalo. Our website is cooperationbuffalo.org. We're also available on social media at Co-op Buffalo. And yeah, there's a national U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. There's the National Cooperative Bank. There are lots of good pieces of infrastructure to support the co-op ecosystem all over the place. And I'm happy to chat with you to find those connections as needed.
Good. Well, Andrew and Hazen, unless you have some question that we need to get into this program, we'll wrap it up here. Hazen, do you at all before I do so?
Yes, we have one question if we can sneak it in.
Good.
Let's see. Kathy asks, I am remembering that Budweiser was planning to sell or give ownership to the workers when the single owner retired. Do you know anything about this?
I don't know the details. I believe that was a situation where they were looking into the ESOP model, the employee stock ownership plan, because that company was a large enough size that could make sense. I do not believe that it happened, but I don't have any other details apart from that. But that's a great example. There are always businesses in that moment of trying to figure out what to do. And we definitely want to be welcomed into the room to at least pitch this, because we think it's a great way to preserve some of these local jobs and these local businesses.
Good.
Thanks so much.
Okay, well, JD, thank you for finding Andrew to bring us this most enlightening presentation. It's the value of, I think, this dimension of the art of investing that it takes. It's a broad umbrella, and it holds things we know and some things like this that most of us hear about for the first time. Certainly from my standpoint, that's true. So, and folks, thank you for joining us today for a very special episode. Hope you'll come back next Tuesday, where we'll have the president of the Buffalo Polish Arts Club. That's Robert Frankowiak. And they are going to be hosting at a national level here in Buffalo, the American Council of Polish Culture, the ACPC annual convention. And the theme for that convention is art and architecture. I believe that's sometime coming up in May. So we'll hear all about it next Tuesday. Please join us. I'm Dennis Galucki,